Okay, so this next video should cover just really question number 8, and I did put a practice there. So this is called composition of functions. And I know it looks weird, but it's it's not. I mean, it's totally doable. So let's look at this first one. So this right here is telling me that first I'm going to evaluate g at -3, meaning I'm going to let x equal -3. So g of -3 equals 5 times -3, which is actually -15. And now I'm going to take the h function and I'm going to evaluate it at g of -3, but g of -3 equals -15. So I'm really evaluating the h function at -15. So instead of x, I'm using -15 for x plus 4. So h of g of -3 is actually -15 plus 4, which is -11. You always start with the function on the far right. Okay, so let's do the next one. G of f of 8. So the first thing I'm going to do is evaluate the f function for x equals 8. So f of 8 is really just 8 squared because the function is x squared. So 8 squared equals 64. So now I'm going to evaluate the g function for whatever f of 8 is, which is 64. And the g function is 5 times x, which is 64. And that equals 320. So g of f of 8 equals 320. Okay. When you use this little dot, this composition, it means the same thing. So this means that I'm going to evaluate g of -1 first. So g of -1, that's 5 times -1, and that equals -5. Then I'm going to evaluate the h function. So at g of -1, which is -5. And my h function is x plus 4, which is -5, plus 4 equals -1. Now I'm going to evaluate the f function, letting x equal -1. And the f function is x squared, so -1 squared is 1. So f of h of g at -1 equals +1. Same thing. Do the g function first. So g of x. Well, g of x is just 5x. So this says f of 5x. These ones are maybe a little bit tricky because you got to just wrap your head around it. So the function g of x, evaluate it when I just let x equal x, is just this 5x. So now I'm going to evaluate f of x, and I'm going to let x equal 5x. So the f function is x squared. What I'm doing is I'm going to replace the x with 5x. So I want you to see what that looks like. 5x, and then I'm going to square that. Well, that means 5x times 5x, and 5 times 5 is 25, and x times x is x squared. So f of g of x is 25x squared, because it didn't give us a value to put in on that one, so that one's a little tricky. Same thing with e. So example E says, first of all, you're going to evaluate h of x. Well, h of x is x plus 4. So now we're going to take the g function, which is, I don't know why I put that parenthesis there. We're going to take the g function, and we're going to evaluate it at x of 4. But the g function is 5 times x. But I'm replacing the number x, or the variable x, with x plus 4. And that means I have to distribute. So 5 times x is 5x, and 5 times 4 is a positive 20. So g of x, h of x, is 5x plus 20. So I've put some examples over here because I think that they're valuable. So this is saying evaluate f of g of x in terms of x, meaning keep the x. So g of x is 3x minus 2. And this is what I'm substituting in for x in the f function. So it's going to be f of 3x minus 2 equals the f function, which is 5 times x. I'm going to write that really nice and big, plus 1, because I'm going to replace the x with 3x minus 2. And I have to distribute. 5 times 3x is 15x. 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. Plus your 1 at the end equals 15x minus 9. Okay. So I've put a couple of examples here. Try them and I'll work them out, and I'll get them set up for you, and then we can talk about an answer later. So try those. That's your composition of functions. And I think that's all I had on that. For examples, you have numbers 2, 3, and I forget you don't have this slide. So let me do that nice and slow. Number 2. So you're evaluating A, f of g of x, and B is asking you to find g of f of x. So the f of x function is 3x squared plus 4x plus 7. And the g of x function is x plus 1. Okay. And like I said, I'll work these out and do a screenshot. And then number 3, you're asked A to find f of g of 2. And then example B wants you to find g of f of 4. And example C is wanting you to do g of negative 1. I think this has a D. Yeah. And example D is wanting you to do f of 3. So the f function is x squared minus, sorry, I wrote that wrong. The f of x function is x squared minus 1. And the g of x function equals 3x plus 2. And then the last one, example number 4. So A is f of g of h of x, and B is h of g of f of 4. The f function is x squared, f of x, sorry. The g of x function is x minus 1, and the h of x function is 1/2 x. So I will work those out and post the answers.